All right, then, Econ friends, welcome back to our final video in our discussion of monopolistic competition. Up to now, we have figured out what MC is. We've learned how to maximize profits and the decisions and the steps involved, and we went from the short run to the long run. In our last video, we dissected some of the efficiency issues, some of the similarities and differences between monopolistic competition and perfect competition. One of the things that we said and we left off our last video was with the idea that they differ in terms of advertising, okay? Perfectly competitive firms do not advertise. It's when we start studying monopolistic competition that we first really see advertising in economics. Now, while advertising is primarily a business function, there are some economic analyses of advertising. And that's what we're going to focus on in this video, okay? So this is a little something extra just to kind of introduce you to advertising as a concept and to kind of dissect a little bit the economics of advertising. Let's jump in. Okay, so first, by way of definition, what is advertising? And we would define advertising as a method, a really important method of non-price competition. Okay, advertising is ultimately one of many forms of non-price competition, and it's going to be commonly seen in industries, including monopolistic competition, where firms have a degree of market power. A more technical way to look at it would be that advertising is the paid activities that businesses and other organizations use to sell their products. So advertising is paid activities that companies, businesses, and other organizations, because universities advertise, governments advertise, nonprofits advertise, lots of organizations advertise in order to sell their products. If you want to take it broader from the lens of business and business strategy, you would say that advertising is one component, one of many, is one component of what we're going to call in the world of business a firm's marketing mix. Marketing in the world of business has a real broad definition. Marketing is all the activities and strategies that companies use to sell products. Lots of people think that marketing is advertising. No, advertising is one of many activities that companies do under the umbrella of marketing. Okay, marketing again is all the activities and strategies that companies use to sell their items. The different decisions that companies make and the different types of tools and strategies that they implement, the products that they use are known as the marketing mix. And each firm will have its own unique marketing mix, which is the mixture, the combination of all the different marketing products that they have at their disposal. Note that advertising is one of them, okay? So the question would be then, now that we know what it is, why would firms do it? And I would offer to you that from the lens of economics, we can analyze advertising from a demand perspective, okay? From the perspective of a firm's demand, by advertising, firms want to achieve two things. First, firms hope to increase the demand for their product. And second, firms hope to create a less elastic, AKA more inelastic demand curve. Okay, so from the perspective of economic demand, by advertising, firms are hoping to, number one, increase demand, and number two, make demand less elastic for their products. Why would they do this? Well, because if they can increase demand and make demand less elastic, AKA more inelastic, you're going to enhance your revenues, and you're going to enhance, ultimately, your profits. And that's the name of the game, okay? Let's break those two things down. Increasing demand, simply put, means that more people will want to buy the product. Okay, we can see that here. You know, originally we have demand curve D1. Notice that advertising will increase demand and shift it out. If you were to draw marginal revenue curves under here and then intersect a marginal cost curve, what you would find is that by advertising, by shifting that demand curve out and making it steeper, you're going to be able to charge a higher price, okay? So that's that effect. Reducing demand elasticity. So again, the first effect, shifting demand out, you can charge higher prices, sell more product. The second effect is the elasticity effect. Reducing demand elasticity, in other words, advertising that makes a product more inelastic. This is going to mean that existing buyers will be less sensitive to price increases. Think about that. If you can put together an effective advertising campaign, you're going to make your existing customers even more loyal to your product. And if they're more loyal, it's more inelastic. If it's more loyal, the customers are less elastic. And this in turn will allow your firm to charge higher prices. In other words, to sum it up, effective advertising from the demand side is going to create both product differentiation and consumer loyalty. You're going to increase demand, you're going to decrease the elasticity, you'll be able to charge higher prices to more people. And you can see that right here in this graph. If you look at panel A, when demand is more elastic, you know, they're going to charge, let's say, $20,000. This is a simplified thing. You see that we kept MC relatively flat just to make it simple. The analysis still works. Here in panel A, we have the original demand curve. Note that it's somewhat flat. It's a little bit in. When you do the MR equals MC rule, they can charge 20,000. But notice though, as we go over here, by advertising, we're going to push the demand curve out and we're going to make it less elastic, more inelastic, steeper. And if you take a look at that, you have our new pushed out and steeper demand curve and the corresponding MR curve. And when you run the analysis, what you see is that you're going to be able to charge higher prices to more people. So that is advertising from the perspective of demand management. The other perspective that we would look at in the economics of advertising is the cost perspective. Now, this one is interesting. Obviously, advertising is really expensive. So if a firm engages in advertising, it's going to shift their ATC, their average total cost curve, upward. A lot of economists complain about advertising because they say it's wasteful and that expenditure pushes cost up, which hurts consumers. But it's not quite so simple, because at the same time that advertising shifts the firm's ATC curve up because it raises overall cost, note that advertising can potentially reduce a firm's overall average total cost by increasing sales. What do we say, wait, what does that mean? We just said a minute ago that advertising is expensive and therefore it's going to raise cost. How can it raise cost but reduce ATC? Well, remember, average total cost is equal to total cost divided by output, total cost divided by sales. So if you have an effective advertising campaign, you're going to incur some cost, but if you can get so many more customers that it offsets that cost, you can actually see ATC go down. In other words, in economic jargon, if you have a really good advertising campaign, You can achieve economies of scale. That's going to increase your sales, increase your output. And paradoxically, that can reduce your ATC, which could actually benefit customers by letting you charge less. We see that right here. If you take a look at this first cost curve here, ATC1, this would be ATC without advertising. Okay, so ATC1, just ATC, no advertising. Now the firm says, let's advertise. They're going to spend a lot of money, and that's going to increase their cost structure, which, as you see here, is going to push their ATC up from ATC1, let's move to red, to ATC2. What does that mean? Well, it depends. Let's say that originally the firm was selling 50 units. If the firm was originally selling 50 units and their advertising campaign sucks and it fails and they're still selling 50 units, then yeah, definitely costs are going to go up and the firm's going to suffer. But imagine that the firm had an excellent advertising campaign. They aced it. So yes, the cost goes up, but if they can sell much, much more output, we can actually see that their ATC might fall. Okay, so as it says here, advertising can either increase cost or potentially decrease ATC depending on if the ad is effective. This is a big part of the reason why companies, when they do these advertisements, really want to increase their scale. Because if you can get enough new customers to offset your cost of advertising, it's a win-win. You get more exposure, you get more product loyalty, and in the process, you reduce ATC. This makes you even more competitive. And this is the kind of pressure that firms are under and the kinds of decisions that firms make every day. Okay, from the economics of advertising, economists generally, because we like classifying things, they classify advertising in a couple different ways. You can look at advertising as informational advertising. Informational advertising will attempt to provide information about the price, about the characteristics, about the availability. Also a part of advertising, and one that economists really don't like as much, is what would be called persuasive advertising. Persuasive advertising would be seen to contain fairly little informational content, but it would really strike emotional appeals in an effort to get buyers to prefer your product over other products. In other words, persuasive advertising is less about the information and more about the gut, about the emotion. It's designed to get you to say, I want that product, not that one, and to get customers to buy your product, okay? Another thing that's tied to this idea of persuasive advertising, we can also argue that from an economics lens, advertising can also be used as a signal. We've discussed signal theory a little bit. In this case, advertising can be used as a signal of quality. Think about this perspective. If a consumer sees an ad campaign and they say, wow, this ad campaign was really expensive. There's signs and commercials and radio spots everywhere. Some people would say, oh, that's wasteful. But some consumers might say, wow, a company that has that level of resource to engage in that big ad, that company has to be large. They have to be successful. They have to be able to invest in quality production processes, okay? This is the reason why companies strive for expensive ads when they really want to push the quality of their products. Tied to this is the importance in advertising of brand names. Okay, related to this is the importance that firms attach and to the significant resources that they invest and spend to build and maintain a brand name. A brand name can serve as a signal of quality, and it can also provide firms with increased customer loyalty, and in turn, the critical thing that firms want, pricing power. Brands are increasingly important. Look at your own expenditures. Look at the companies that you favor. Ask yourself, are there brands that I like? Notice that the brands don't generally offer tangibles, but the intangibles, the emotional appeal, the gut appeal is equally important. This is the reason why, as I said here, companies spend lots of money, especially when there's intense competitive rivalries. Companies spend lots of money. Some companies spend up to 20% of their entire revenue base on advertising and on the cultivation, the building, and the preservation of a strong brand name. At the end, this might be expensive, but it might also serve to show quality. And it's this contradictory focus, this contradictory impact that has economists disagreeing on whether advertising is good or bad. And we'll leave you with this thought. Even today, where advertising is all around us, economists debate heavily on whether advertising is good or bad from the perspective of society, economic efficiency, and social welfare. Okay. Some economists, they like advertising. They see that it provides net benefits to society. They say that advertising can lower search costs. It can provide consumers with information, that advertising by implementing competition, that advertising can actually reduce prices and increase competition. There have been numerous studies that in industries ranging from eyewear to prescriptions and other really important sectors of the economy, they've done studies that have shown that increases in advertising they correspond with decreases in prices. In other words, they say the advertising increases the competition, it increases the rivalry, and in the end, consumers benefit because prices go down. It's a good thing, okay? So some economists say that advertising can lower search and information costs, can reduce prices, can increase competition, that it can increase product quality and reliability, and that critically, even though it's intangible and emotional, some consumers report that they simply enjoy branded products more. And we have to take seriously whether they're intangible, whether the advertising is expensive. If it leads to more consumer enjoyment, that can be seen as a benefit. Lots of consumers report higher satisfaction in consuming branded products that are heavily advertised that they enjoy. Okay, but there's a flip side. Other economists, they criticize advertising, and they have some decent points. They say that some ads are manipulative. They say that sometimes ads create these, needs for trivial items, although I would argue back that who's to say that an item is trivial? If it gives you utility, then it's not trivial. And sometimes it's nice when companies invent new things and get us to like those new things because we experience those new things, okay? But still, there's criticisms that advertising is manipulative, that it creates these needs for trivial items, that it's wasteful, that in worst case scenarios, it's misleading, and that in some industries, advertising does not increase competition and reduce price, but some economists argue that in particular industries, advertising actually reduces market competition, increases concentration, and therefore hurts consumers. Our goal in this class, my friends, as you know, is not to engage in normative economics. So I will leave the decision of whether advertising is good or bad, net positive or net negative, to you. But in this video, I want to help you understand what advertising is, show you some of the economics of advertising, and introduce you to the debate that surrounds it. And with this, my friends, we're done with our series on monopolistic competition. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, I'll see you next time.